Hey there, welcome back to another video. This time around, it is my review of the 1985 teen comedy, Just One of the Guys. Now, this is one of those films I saw when I was a kid on TV once, thought it was okay, and in all honesty, I still feel that way about this movie. But before I get around to sharing more of my thoughts on this film, I want to give a special shout out to Andrew for requesting this review. And if there's another film, TV show, or topic that you would like to see me discuss in the future, feel free to donate to either my PayPal or to my Patreon. The link to both is in the video description down below, and I will try to get your request as soon as I possibly can. Now, Just One of the Guys is directed by Lisa Gottlieb, and I believe this was her first film. And you can see some of that first time filmmaker warts when it comes to the direction in this. It's not bad, it's just a serviceable, okay job from a directorial standpoint. The framing is fine, the shot selection is so-so. The skill level is not particularly high, but there are some moments where some skill is definitely shown when it comes to how a shot is framed or how the camera is utilized in terms of a particular angle or technique. I do feel that she maintained a fairly consistent visual tone throughout. It definitely is a movie that has a lot of mirthful, over the top, campy energy to it, and I definitely do feel that Lisa brought that to the film when it comes to the way that she shot a lot of scenes in the movie. It's not a film that really has any sort of wild inconsistencies in terms of the direction, but there's just a lot of just meh, just kind of so okay at best directing to the point where it almost looks like a TV movie at points. I have to be honest, I really do. Especially in comparison to other uh, comedies or even teen sex comedies from this decade. There are a lot of other films that have a direction that is a lot more dynamic overall than what you get here, but it's not terrible. It's just fine. Now, Just One of the Guys is written by Dennis Feldman and Jeff Franklin. And the concept of the film is interesting. It's another one of those gender bender cross-dressing kind of comedies, but instead of it being the usual one where it's horned up guys dressing up as girls so they can be a part of the sorority, so they can hit on girls in secret and or have to do some sort of ritual initiation thing to get into a frat, and it involves with them having to get into the sorority. Instead of doing that, it's this girl named Terry who is an inspiring journalist. She wrote an essay about like the food pyramid or like the nutritional content in the school lunches. She felt like she did an amazing job with it, but her teacher didn't feel that it was good enough to get uh, put into the contest to go into the local newspaper. So she feels that she's being slighted because of her gender. So she decides to come up with this plan where she's going to dress up like a boy and go to this other school, and then turn her essay in over there and get it into the paper. Apparently, it's really easy to just get into random high schools, apparently, by just saying that you're somebody, even if you're not that person. And there's no way to actually prove that you're that person. Uh, yeah, you just be like, yeah, my name is Terry with a Y. I'm the new kid. And so there is some fun to be had with this whole thing. A lot of it is really honestly due to the performance by the lead, Joyce Hyser. It's not really due to what's in the script, because what's in the script is a lot of typical cliched stuff, like what you would expect. Oh, it goes into the men's bathroom, definitely can't use the urinal, but a guy comes in, so she has to act like she just finished, and then realizes after the guy leaves, "Oh, I still have to go," so then she has to go in and use the stall. The whole stuff in the locker room during gym class, getting jock straps thrown at her, seeing all these guys undressed and like half naked or straight up naked, and trying not to show that she's into them. The whole thing at the basketball game where, oh, she can't take her shirt off for shirts versus skins because she's gonna reveal who she is, so just to fake that she has a stomach cramp and has to go to the nurse's office. You have this stuff where there's girls at the school who are crushing on Terry because they think that he's hot, so she has to deal with that. And I think one of the girls is played by Sherilyn Fenn in one of her earliest roles. I think the character's name is Sandy. Um, yeah, yeah, it's Sandy. And so Sandy had develops this crush on Terry, but of course Terry doesn't want anything to do with her because she's not into girls, but she's playing a guy, so she has to kind of still play the part. And along the way, she befriends this outcast, this loner in Rick Morehouse. And so she befriends this guy. They become friends. They become bros, and she's trying to help him in terms of changing his style, giving him a bit of a makeover, giving him more confidence to stand up for himself and stand out more. And it works. Girls are more into him because before she tried to get him to ask all these different girls out for the prom, but they just turned him down every time. And she gives him these new clothes and this new outlook on life, and that gives him the confidence to stand up to the bully at the school, Greg Tolan, who's this bodybuilder guy who just likes to lift up tables and just act like a typical douchebag jock. And of course, he's played by William Zabka. I mean, oh, who else are you gonna cast to play that character? But so yeah, you have this stuff with Rick and Terry. And Terry also has this girl, this well, not necessarily a girlfriend, but she has a friend of hers named Denise, who she hangs out with from time to time, who ultimately winds up helping her later on, being her prom date, because she's not able. Of course, she can't go to the prom with Rick, even though she really wants to. But there's this stuff going on with Rick, and she's starting to develop feelings for him, but she already has a boyfriend. And this guy, I don't remember exactly. It doesn't seem like. I think his name is Kevin. I think that's the name of this character. So Kevin is in a relationship with Terry, but Terry really doesn't love him anymore and wants to find a way to break things off, but doesn't know how to do that without hurting his feelings, or something along those lines. Or she's still not sure yet whether or not she really wants to be with Rick. So yeah, that's sort of drama that's going on. And Rick ultimately winds up going with Greg's girlfriend and Deborah, because Greg um, he got completely humiliated at lunch by Rick in a well written scene where Rick stood up to the bully Greg and downplayed his strength and basically poked fun at him, bullied him instead, but verbally, not physically. Made him look like a dumbass, talked about, how amazing it is for him to grace the lunchroom with his feats of strength of lifting tables. And of course, pisses Greg off. And he wants to kill Rick. But because of the way that he's acting, and it winds up driving a wedge between him and his girlfriend and Deborah. And Rick has had a crush on Deborah for years, and due to more encouragement by Terry, he asks Deborah out. Deborah actually agrees. So, of course, that causes some problems with Terry. And of course, there's a lot of stuff going on in the script where Terry has to try to switch in and out of personas, sometimes all at the same time, like Mrs. Doubtfire style. But I would say Mrs. Doubtfire was definitely a lot funnier when it comes to how it handled those uh, story elements. And it all culminates at the prom, and that's where Terry's brother gets involved because he brings Kevin along to the prom. And speaking of Terry's brother, Buddy, there are some scenes with Buddy that I like. There's some lines that the character gets that are kind of funny. The scene when Buddy is teaching Terry how to act like a guy, how to walk like a guy, how to scratch your balls. All balls itch. That's a fact. Like that is some genuine highlights for that character, and you can tell that there's a good friendly dynamic between the brother and sister. But there's a lot of stuff with this character that I found to be just irritating. He's just constantly horned up all the time, and maybe it's not just the dialogue and the way the character is written. It might also be due to the performance by the actor, Billy Jacoby, who's playing this character. But the writing doesn't really help either. Like, it's just one note. It's very one note. It's like, oh, it's just multiple different variations of this teenage boy just talking about how horny he is. And it just got old for me, and I didn't find it to be that funny, especially not funny enough that it was just a continual repeated gag throughout the movie. And there's a lot of like repeated gags throughout this movie that just don't work for me. There's these two nerdy guys who are supposed to be space aliens, or they act like they're space aliens, but they were intended to be Trekkies, but they didn't want to get sued by Paramount, so they were all like, "They're not Trekkies, they're just weird guys who and nerds who think that they're aliens, and they have their own language." And they're just unbelievably obnoxious in every scene that they're in. Well, like that's literally the kind of stuff that those two do throughout this movie. I think their names are, yeah, it's Willie. Yeah, one of them is Willie. I know that for a fact. I don't remember who the other guy was, but it's Willie and some other actor. Some other character. Sorry, I got him mixed up. I was just thinking about those two. Just makes my brain hurt because it just reminds me of how headache inducing those two characters were. There's this other guy named Reptile as well, and the running gag is that he just has a bunch of reptiles that he has around him at all times. A chameleon, a lizard, an iguana. For some reason, he also has a frog at one point, and I'm like, that's not a reptile, that's an amphibian. Did you forget what a reptile is, reptile? Um, give me Mortal Kombat's reptile over this guy. Can you imagine Mortal Kombat's reptile in this movie? Take this reptile out, put out Mortal Kombat's reptile in the film in the same role. Then it would be significantly better, if you ask me. um, but yeah, there's just a lot of repeated gags that just don't work for me. And of course, you have the scene that a lot of people remember, probably a lot of young males remember who grew up with this movie in the 80s and 90s, because it's probably one of their first exposures to full frontal nudity when Terry reveals her breasts to Rick because Rick got in a fight with Greg, and he actually kicked Greg's ass because this was after Greg threw Rick. threw Terry into the water and was just completely just wrecking the prom because his girl still wants to be with Rick, even though he was voted prom king. And so this leads to the moment where the liar is revealed because it had to be because there was a fight with Terry and Greg, and there was this whole thing with Terry's boyfriend, who Kevin, who showed up, and of course initially Rick is thinking that Terry is gay, but then Terry has to reveal that she's not gay and that she's a she, and does it by opening her top and showing her tits. And understandably so, Rick is confused and angry, and then splits things off with Terry. It just completely splits their friendship and doesn't want anything to do with her. And you can't blame him. It's very understandable, considering the circumstances. Um, there was a fun line before that, though. I do want to mention, like, the whole thing where Terry's like, "I'm a woman," and then he's all like, "Yeah, and I'm Cyndi Lauper." Like, so like there's some fun, lines scattered throughout this script, and that was definitely one of them. And Terry gets her paper published, and this time around it's a rewrite, and it's "I Was a Teenage Boy," which was, I think, the original title for the film. And she gets the paper published, and in the paper she was really sad about losing Rick. And the movie ends fairly predictably. Like, Terry winds up with Rick because she wound up breaking up with Kevin, and she's free now, and Rick wound up getting with Terry in the end. But the way that it's set up was just kind of forced and didn't really make a whole lot of sense. It just seemed like Rick just decided, what the hell, I'll just get with Terry after he read the paper uh that she wrote. But I'm like, okay, but what about Deborah? There's no line of dialogue that references Deborah being broken up with, or Deborah breaking up with Rick. So it's kind of like you didn't really resolve things. You just decided, that's just done. And Rick is now going to be with Terry. And then Buddy's going to go drive off with some random woman on a motorcycle. Because he got laid and he feels like he now has, like, the freedom to do anything, I guess, ride off on motorcycles with complete strangers, because he wound up being with Sandy. I mean, good for him. He winds up getting Sherilyn Fenn. I mean, that's a pretty good get there, buddy. But it's it's just one of those scripts where the idea is fun. There is some fun to be had with it. It is a little different than some of the other cross-dressing, gender bender kind of comedies of this type because of the fact that it's a girl acting like a guy. Um, but the comedy is very hit and miss for me, and it is very cliched. It doesn't really, I mean, you got the cliched jock, bully, the nerdy outcast guy who gets some new clothes and gets a new haircut, and now he's cool. You know, that kind of stuff. And it doesn't do a whole lot to differentiate itself from a typical average teen comedy from the 80s, other than the fact that it's a girl acting like she's a guy. That's really about it. Everything else about it is very typical when it comes to the way that it's written, and the dialogue and the way that things play out. Um, it's just all right. It's an okay screenplay. Apparently, Lisa Gottlieb, she apparently was involved with the script with a guy named Mitch Giannuzio, but they were denied having credit on this by the producers, which is lame. So I want to give them credit because they did their part too when it comes to the script. But for me, I think it's two cast members in particular that really make this film into at least an adequate time waster, and it's Joyce Hyser and Clayton Rohner. Now, Joyce Hyser, I thought she was great. She was a lot of fun. You could tell that she was really enjoying playing Terry, the new guy at school, and she really got into the role. And while it wasn't completely 100% believable, it was plausible enough because of the way that she handled the role and the way that she said her lines and changed her vocal inflection and her attitude that you could kind of buy it. And so it made the absurd concept of the film wind up working out for the most part. If it wasn't for her, this would have been a bomb. It actually didn't do well financially, but it would not have gotten a cult following without Joyce Hyser. I 100% believe that that's the case. If you had a different actress playing this who wasn't as charismatic, wasn't as charming, wasn't as capable in terms of playing both sides of the character, being the feminine, sexy girl, and then being the guy. And if you didn't have an actress who was able to pull both off somewhat convincingly and do it in a way where it's not like half-assed, this would have been pretty bad. But Joyce Hyser was the right casting choice, and she really gave her all here. And it's a shame, like, it didn't do well, and I think that's why she didn't really wind up getting a lot of lead roles later on in her career, because of the fact that it didn't do well theatrically. It did well on home video, but that was honestly years later. And I think it also did well on cable and stuff like that. But at that point, I mean, the ship had sailed for Joyce in terms of getting more, you know, recognition for the performance or more film roles. She did wind up getting some, decent stuff. Like she had a reoccurring role in The Flash from 1990 with John Wesley Shipp as a character that I felt was actually pretty good. She played like a private eye and detective type character who appeared in like 3 episodes. She also was in an episode of Freddy's Nightmares that, surprisingly enough, was also directed by Lisa Gottlieb. But that was like a year after I think like a maybe 2 years after the release of this movie. I think it was in '87, maybe three. It might have been in '88. But yeah, she was in Freddy's Nightmares, so I thought that was pretty cool. But it just never really worked out for her, which sucks because this is a difficult role and she did a good job with it. Because she's the star. Like this doesn't work without her. Clayton Rohner, I also really liked. I like Clayton Rohner anyway. I like him a lot in April Fool's Day, I Madman. I also felt he was pretty good in his role that he had in Destroyer with Lyle Lozado. Um, and I felt that he had some really good chemistry with Joyce Hyser, and he did a good job playing the two different sides of his character as well. He did a good job playing the loner, loser, outcast guy who's lacking confidence, but also did a great job playing the guy who is feeling himself, because he's got a new look, he's got a new haircut, he's got a new bit of confidence. And so he did a good job playing that role too, where he's honestly kind of turns into a bit of a badass, where he's standing up on the lunch table and calling out the bully and knocking him down a few pegs and then literally knocks the bully out at the end. Like Rohner did a great job as well. Billy Jacoby, I know there are people who really like this performance. I didn't care for it. I felt like at points it was fine, like some of his deadpan worked for me, but a lot of the time I felt like he was just trying way too hard to be funny and it was really cringe inducing and he was just annoying. I didn't find him to be funny or endearing. I found him to be incredibly irritating most of the time. And I think a lot of it is because of the way that he played the character. Like, if he just dialed it back a little and didn't force things so much in terms of him trying to be a cool kid, then I think that might have worked better. But because he forces it so much and it's like he's a member of like some 80s sitcom, it's pretty hard to watch at times, at least for me personally. William Zabka, I mean it's William Zabka. He plays a great bully. Like, yeah, you want to punch this guy in the face. And that's the whole point. It's a pretty one note character, but he plays that note very well. Um, Toni Hudson is Denise, another cast member that was just She plays Terry's friend, and there's some fun moments with her when she goes to prom with Terry, because Terry begs her to go to prom with her. But there's a lot of moments with those two where I just didn't feel the chemistry. I didn't think the vibes were that great between her and Joyce Hyser. I think honestly, maybe they could have looked at a different actress that maybe would have tested better with her, because I just didn't buy the two were really close friends and they didn't really have a really strong dynamic. Um, but maybe that could have also been the script. Leigh McCloskey is Kevin. He did a good job playing a boyfriend who is a lot of ways just thinking with what's in between his legs and literally nothing else. He's a rich guy, he's spoiled, and he's bratty in the way that like rich guys are, but he's also an ignorant ass because he's just not able to pick up on the signals that Terry is giving him or willing to give Terry credit for her desire to be a journalist. He just sees it as a hobby. So he did a good job playing like the snooty, rich, dick. Sherilyn Fenn, not really a lot for her to do except play this character who's all horned up for Joyce Hyser as Terry Griffith. But she did a good job in that role, and I felt that she had some good moments with Billy Jacoby when the two went to bed with one another, and they're just kind of messing with Terry uh, at the end of the movie. Deborah Goodrich is Deborah. It's fine for what her character is supposed to be, the popular girl, the queen of the school. Uh, Ari Gross as Willie. I hated that character. He's annoying. I heard Ari Gross and the other guy. There's another actor who played his friend, uh, the second member of the annoying alien duo. They improvised all their stuff. You can tell. And it's not good improv by any means. Ari Gross is not a bad actor. He's done some decent work, but this is not it. Stuart Charno, he plays Reptile. He was in Friday the 13th Part 2. He played one of the teens in that. He played Ted. He was also in Christine. He played Don Vandenberg. So he's been in a few things that you might recognize him in. Not just this. I mean, what can he do with a character that is literally just, oh, I have reptiles and I carry them around in the school? Like, there's not really a whole lot you can do with that. But so yeah, it's not the best cast in the world, but it's fine. It's it's fairly represented, if you ask me, when it comes to just the overall fine nature of the movie. The same thing goes for the cinematography by John McPherson or the editing by Lou Lombardo. Like, all of those aspects of the film, technique wise, are not tremendous, but they're not terrible either. And the music by Tom Scott, I don't really remember any like musical score. If it was there, it was very generic. I remember more of like songs that they used for the soundtrack. Like just one of the guys, the title song by Shalimar, or Girls Got Something Boys Ain't Got by Midnight Star. Um, and there were some other songs that were used that were not on the soundtrack. Like Trouble by Lindsey Buckingham, which is a good one. Um, so yeah, not a bad soundtrack, not a great soundtrack either, though. There's a lot of filler, forgettable tracks from that soundtrack. And I will give the film credit. It's not too long. It's like 100 minutes, but that's with the end credits. You take the end credits out, it's only like an hour and 30 something minutes. So it's not one of those things where it becomes too lengthy and too dull and too played out. But yeah, I have to admit it was just really okay. Just one of the guys is just okay. That's how I feel about the film. But anyway, that's my opinion of just one of the guys. And until the next review and the next time, I'll see you later. See ya.